The deadly attacks in Paris on Friday night, where trained and organised gunmen used automatic weapons and suicide bombs to kill civilians, has raised questions about security in France. Joining me now to talk about it is our Defence and Security Editor, Sam Jones. Sam, this attack comes just 10 months after the Charlie Hebdo killings. Why wasn't it detected?
Well, that's the big question that everyone's asking, particularly because there were so many different moving parts to this attack. There were at least 8 gunmen and assailants, all of whom would have had to communicate, organise, plan, and you'd expect that with that it would have been detected. There's a sort of axiom in counter-terror work that the bigger the plot, the more complex it is, then the more likely it is to be uncovered. In this instance, it's still unclear whether there's been a sort of intelligence failing or whether perhaps this was organised outside of France and then perpetrated in France, which would have made it very complicated for the French security authorities, or whether this is just the kind of thing that we have to get used to expecting given the actual scale of the threat posed by ISIS as a result of the Syrian civil war.
And is France, do you think, particularly vulnerable to this kind of planned terrorist attack?
France is. So France is one of the sort of top-tier countries that ISIS has made clear that it wants to hit back for the coalition's efforts against it in Syria and Iraq. But France, unlike, say, the UK or the US, is more exposed because of its place geographically in the heart of the borderless Schengen Euro area, which means that it's much easier for would-be attackers to smuggle weapons across the border, to, as I said moments ago, to plot outside in places like Belgium and then carry out an attack in France. And also France has a much larger population of radicals that sympathise with ISIS or have gone to Syria and Iraq to fight with ISIS compared to other states.
Now, you touched on this already, but how big a danger do you think there is that European intelligence agencies are simply unable to keep up with the threat posed by ISIS as it grows and evolves?
Well, this is really the heart of the matter, because ISIS has exploded in the past 2 years as a threat. And the original assessment was that ISIS was very focused on Syria and Iraq, unlike Al-Qaeda, which had this grand idea of a sort of global jihad. But that has shifted as ISIS has come under pressure. And what this attack shows is that ISIS is now putting significant resources behind its words and trying to attack Europe. For the intelligence agencies, that's a big problem, because they simply do not, as it stands, have the resources to tackle the sheer numbers involved. So if you look at France, there are at least 1,500 citizens that have gone to fight with ISIS, many of whom have already returned. And all of those, you can't simply monitor them all the time, given the constraints on manpower and finance that are available to the French intelligence agencies. And then you've also got to factor in all of the jihadis from elsewhere around Europe that can move freely within the Schengen zone, who might want to perpetrate attacks. So Belgium is a good example. There's a lot of Belgians that have gone to fight with IS, and there's a lot of Germans, there's a lot of Danes. The problem is really pan-European.
Now, a final question, just briefly. France has, of course, launched airstrikes on Raqqa in Syria, the ISIS stronghold, in retaliation. What other measures can we expect to see, do you think?
Yeah, so this is Operation Chamal, which is the French military action against ISIS. They said they dropped 20 bombs in Raqqa on last night. That, however, is unlikely to be anything that will change matters for ISIS on the ground. The reality is that they are militarily constrained, both France and the US, because there's a paucity of targets in Syria for them. So unless there is a significant ground campaign there, they simply do not know what to strike that is definitely ISIS. They definitely don't want to be striking civilian targets, because that might increase local support for ISIS. So we'll probably see a ramping up of the military effort, but it's going to be incremental. I think the biggest effect from all of this will be in Europe itself, because this is sure to reignite the debate about border controls and immigration.
Sam, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks very much.
Thank you.